Hey, this is Joe from Home Studio Corner. Today we're going to talk about mixing vocals, specifically using EQ. Even more specifically than that, I was mixing this song recently, there are really kind of 3 EQ moves that I do on a lead vocal all the time. Almost every time, if not every time. So I'm going to go over those 3, and we'll talk about how to listen for these, when do you need to use them, why to use them, and how to use them. Sound good? All right. Here is a vocal from a track that I'm working on. It sounds okay, but let's just take a quick listen to the vocal itself, raw, dry vocal, and take some mental notes about what does this need to happen to get it to be finished, polished vocal that we're looking for.
There's a truth in front of me, I know that it will set me free. There's a truth in front of me, I know that it will set me free.
All right, if your face did like mine on that last free note, there was something a little about it. The pitch was fine, but there was like a spikiness, a harshness to it that was hard to listen to. That's the first one we're going to dive into. This is something I find myself doing on vocals so often. And it's this idea of like a ringing or whistling frequency in the vocal. It usually comes out on certain words or specifically certain vowel sounds, like the E vowel sound. You have to make your whole mouth has to change to make an E sound. A lot more sound comes through your nose. So maybe this is like the way the nasal passages resonate or the room itself. I'm not sure what it is, but I've been in, this will make my 6th studio in the last 10 years, and I've had this same sort of problem in each space. So it's not really the room, and it's different microphones. It's just the same singer mostly, so maybe that's the problem. But I've noticed when I mix other people's voices too, I can usually find a place to smooth out the vocal by finding this frequency and pulling it down. So let's listen to, I know it's going to be painful, but let's listen to this free one more time just to get in our head what that sound is that we're trying to get rid of. Free. So if you can actually see it on the EQ, look at the EQ. I'll turn the music off, but you'll see there's a bit of a spike here. So this is the note that we're singing, right? This is this D sharp, which by the way, this is fairly new in Studio One, this 12th octave EQ view. It can be handy. So we can see I'm singing this note, but here are the different harmonics of it. And we can see there's a couple of spikies up here in like the 2 to 3K range. That's usually where I find that problem. So what I'm listening for is kind of this sort of a sound. So it's not quite an octave, a multiple of that frequency, but it's close to an octave or 2 up. So let's just boost fairly narrowly with this EQ and find, it's going to be right in here, but let's start up higher and find that spot. This is always infinitely fascinating to me. There are 3 different harmonics that are whistling there. The something like that. I could do this all day. But let's decide which of those is the problem. I think it might be the higher one up near 5K, not the 2 or 1K one. It's right up there, so I think it's up here around 5K. I'm going to turn the volume down so it doesn't hurt you, but let's find it. Yeah, that's it. So I found it. I've isolated it. It is almost exactly 4K. So I'm going to pull that down with a real narrow EQ and listen to how much smoother the vocal sounds now. Now, I apologize, it's making a popping noise when I turn it on and off because it's so dramatic. But listen to, the vocal no longer has that ringing sound. It now sounds a good bit smoother. Literally, as I turn it on and off, it sounds like an alarm is going off in the house next door. This when I turn that EQ on and off. Okay, that's enough of that. That's one of the biggest ones I can tell you. If the vocal is feeling like it sits good, it sounds bright and full and great, but then there's certain notes where it just goes and it whistles and jumps out and hurts your ears, a lot of times this is the solution. There's usually just one frequency that occasionally two, but usually it's just one. I'm not going to go find those other frequencies and cut them. This was the one that was making it sound so horrible. And then you just bring it down a certain amount until when you hear the dry vocal, it doesn't have that whistly sound to it. If you don't have a good ear for listening for that, I totally get that. If you just feel like it's harsh, just go do this. Do what I did, boost it a little more wide, and just sweep it around, and you'll find one of them is the most annoying, and then pull that one down and just see how it sounds. A lot of this is just trial and error and stuff that I found by doing just what I've shown you, pushing it up, moving it around, hurting my ears for a while, then finding one that sounds good. All right, the second thing, we're going to go from the top frequencies to the really low frequencies. You might think there's no reason to cut the really, really low stuff in a vocal. My voice doesn't go down to 40 hertz, so why would I bother cutting that off? That's just a waste of time. Well, I actually have a spot where I will show you exactly what's happening. Here I'm singing the word but there, so the but has a nice kind of kick drum sound to it. Take a listen.
But they're beautiful.
Okay, now I want to show you something. I'm going to use a really sharp high cut filter or low pass filter. It's rolling off everything above like 120 hertz. Listen to what is present in this vocal track once we remove all the highs. That's a lot of low frequency energy. Now granted, I turned it up a little bit, but that's just sitting there waiting to cloud up our mix and to mess with our kick drum and our bass guitar parts and just add this extra muddiness every time I sing. So a really good rule of thumb is to generally on vocals, roll off some of those low frequencies. It doesn't have to be super dramatic, and it doesn't even have to be something you audibly hear, like the vocal gets thin like this.
But they're beautiful.
Do that, but we do want to get rid of some of those excessive low end material, which is just a good practice in general to free up the low end for the stuff that needs to have low end, like kick drum and bass. So let's do that real quickly.
But they're beautiful. Yeah, but they're beautiful. But they're beautiful. But they're beautiful.
So that went from being a big butt going boo to a normal butt that went buh, just by that one cut. Now that was a fairly aggressive one. It went all the way up to like 180. We pull it back down just a little bit, but that smoothed out that, or got rid of that low end rumble. Now the final place where vocals might need a little bit of work is if we just listen to this vocal. Now we've done all this in solo, and I know that's not the best environment to do this stuff, but it's helpful for teaching. So let's play the vocal here again. Listen to the vocal. What else does it need?
There's a truth in front of me.
Let me play it for you with the rest of the music, see if you can guess.
There's a truth in front of me. I know that it will set me free.
So the vocal has this just sort of muddiness to it. When we listen to it in solo, it kind of sounds nice.
There's a truth.
But when we listen to it in the mix, we realize, oh, that's too much woo, 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 woo frequency there. It's causing, it's not the low end boom that we took care of already. This is a low mid problem that gives the vocal its warmth, but right now it's out of balance. There's a little too much of that warmth, so the vocal gets a little muddy. And when you listen to it in the mix, especially if we go to like a bigger section of the mix, like here.
But they're beautiful. Yeah, they're beautiful.
The good parts of the vocal, like that airy falsetto that was there, we don't hear as clearly, and we could boost the highs to hear that a little more, but we still have that kind of low mid muddiness that's there that's really thicker than everything else in the mix. We don't want that. We want the vocal to be loud. We don't want it to be too thick. We want it to be warm without being muddy. So let's deal with that now by grabbing a lower EQ like this one and going and finding somewhere in the 100 to 300 range will be that frequency that's going whoa, 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 whoa. Not the big low one, but more like a wah, 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 right in there. Let's find it.
There's a truth in front of me. I know that it will set me free.
So it's one of these two. It's either down here at around 220 or it's up here at about double that, so at about 440. Might be both. We can kind of just play with both and see which one sounds better. We'll do a little bit narrower cut. This time we want a little, not a super narrow one because it's a more of a broad range of frequencies we're trying to affect. Let's just find which one sounds better when we cut it.
There's a truth in front of me. I know that it will set me free.
That sounds a little bit better, but it actually still has plenty of that whoop, whoop, whoop that we had before. So let's change that and try around the 220 mark.
There's a truth in front of me. I know that it will set me free. There's a truth in front.
And that's about the spot that I would leave the vocal. It comes across just slightly thin when you're listening to the vocal in solo, but in the mix, it sits really well.
There's a truth in front of me.
It has just enough of that, those humming frequencies to still feel warm, but not so much that it's like whoa, 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 and coming through and being one of the loudest sets of frequencies in the entire mix. Final bonus, if you get to this point and you're still thinking, that vocal could be a little bit brighter, you can always grab a little boost up here at like 8 to 10K just to give it a little extra crispiness on the top end like this.
There's a truth in front of me. I know that it will set me free. There's a truth in front of me. I know that it will set me free.
Now, there are other things that we'll go into mixing this vocal. We'll add compression to get it tighter on top of the mix. We'll probably add some de-essing to make sure those S's aren't too bright while still maintaining that nice airy top end boost that we gave it. But these 3 to 4 EQ moves are a very familiar friend to my vocal mixes. I find myself doing some variation of this all the time. And if you're not doing these, check them out and see if it works with your workflow. Maybe you're missing 1, 2, or maybe even all of them into your vocal mixing workflow, and this can make your vocals stand out a lot better. Maybe there are problems there you didn't realize were problems until watching this video, and now you can go back and fix those and find your vocals starting to pop and to sound a lot more professional, a lot more pro than they were before. Thanks so much for watching this video. Hope it was really helpful for you. Be sure to like and subscribe. And if you'd like a copy of my free 5-step mixing guide, that's free to you. Check it out at 5stepmix.com. See ya.